Grace is a 27-year-old HR staff member who's gunning for an associate position in her department, but her boss Claire doesn't consider her fit for the job. On the lookout for Claire, Grace Power walks into her office with a bright smile, optimistic that the job is hers for the taking. This puts Claire in an awkward position as she thinks of the best way to let Grace down without sounding too direct. Claire finally informs Grace that she doesn't qualify for the position because it requires a sociable and outgoing staff and not a social recluse like our dear Grace. Let's be clear, how does someone who gets tongue-tied when she sees her crush possibly ever want to lead, recruit, and mentor clients? This news dampens Grace's spirits. She's almost in tears as she tries to convince Claire that she would improve her social skills, but she's simply grappling at straws as Claire insists that the associate position is not a learning ground for such skills. Even the news of a management offer opening up in 6 months' time does nothing for Grace's mood as she trudges out of her office. In the hallway, she meets her coworker and crush Roshan. He stops her to thank her for helping him with some HR advice which just got him a promotion, but Grace waves it off as nothing. She is surprised when he invites her to have celebratory drinks with him after work. Tongue-tied as usual, she mumbles out her words. Roshan is anxious to go out with her because he likes her too. He informs her that their other colleagues, including the opposite girl Jennifer, will be joining them. She is flustered when she hears Jennifer's name. She decides not to go as she thinks that Jennifer and Roshan are an item. She informs Roshan she has plans and won't be able to make it with them. She charges into the open elevator and leaves Roshan wondering what just happened. It's a chilly night for Grace both physically and emotionally. The day has been such an emotional roller coaster for her, and as she steps into the train, it fully hits her and she breaks down in tears. In the next scene, we meet Carter, a professional hockey player with a cocky attitude to show for it. But he's in deep trouble as his coach has some bad news for him. His coach informs him that he has been demoted to the lower league with immediate effect. Carter is shocked at the coach's extreme decision. He claims that his off games lately should not warrant a demotion since his recent games are picking up. His coach insists that he needs to work harder and maybe come back to the team by next season. Carter is crushed at the news. It seems like his life has come to an end, and in a way, it has. Unemployment, or even demotion, is no joke. Grace visits her friend Joni at the shop where she works. Joni stays with Grace, albeit on her couch. As she cleans up, she launches into a conversation about her recent house search, but Grace has a juicier gist to share with her. She spurts out that she spoke with Roshan at the office. Joni is impressed and asks for more details from Grace. She is disappointed when yet again, Grace allows her imagination to ruin things for her. Our dear Grace, it seems, has a thing for saying no to cute guys. In fact, Joni reminds her of all the guys she has said no to in the past because of very flimsy reasons, and it's a long list. Joni has known Grace since university, but apparently, she hasn't come to terms with Grace's weird behavior. Whenever Grace likes a guy and dates him for some time, she finds a fault in him that makes her stop dating him. As a matter of fact, Joni concludes that no guy is ever good enough for Grace. But Grace doesn't accept Joni's analysis, so she decides to test her. She asks her to go talk to a man in the coffee shop, but Grace refuses. She claims that he is a stranger, so she can't approach him. When Joni asks her why, she tells her that the guy has a ponytail. And here we have it, ladies and gentlemen. A typical Grace excuse. Joni tries to invite her out with her to a bar later, but Grace throws a pass on the invitation. Joni isn't surprised at all. After all, Grace has the habit of going to bed by 8:30 p.m. every night. This remark infuriates Grace, and she walks out of the shop, ignoring Joni's remorseful calls. She returns home to an empty house about to do the exact thing Joni accused her of, retiring to bed by 8:30 p.m. Back to Carter, he arrives at the hotel the team booked for him, and upgrades to a more expensive room on the team's tab. It's their punishment for demoting him. Childish, I know, but it's exhilarating. You should try it too. He checks into his new room and leaves a message for his agent to call him back with what next step he has to take. Back home, Grace locks herself in her room and ignores Joni's invitation to join her at her hangout spot. When Joni finally leaves, Grace stays up on her bed, restless and unable to sleep. She makes up her mind to prove everybody who calls her timid wrong. She dresses up and meets Joni at her hangout spot. Joni is excited when she sees Grace. She apologizes to her for earlier, but Grace waves it off. But their truce doesn't last long when Grace finds out that Joni has plans with her date. Grace is left alone to fend for herself, and she regrets leaving her house. She looks awkward sitting at the bar all alone, with no drinks to pass the time. The only thing she does to keep herself entertained is people watching. With all the time in his hands and nothing to do, a big difference from when he was still playing for his team, Carter finds his way to the same club to blow off some steam and think of something else apart from the team. But the universe has other things in store for him. He is with Lisa, the receptionist from the hotel. It's a friendly date as Lisa already has a boyfriend who is a fan of Carter. She tries to get some scoop from him on why he is not with his team. To make matters worse, a random fan recognizes him and approaches him. He is concerned about why Carter wasn't playing with the team. The wounds from the demotion are still fresh in his mind. Carter is still upset about the issue, and he refuses to answer any of the questions about hockey. Carter is forced to walk off when the fan doesn't take the hint to stop with the questions. Grace decides to brave the consequences and follow Joni's idea of finding her own guy. She says hi to the guy sitting close to her. He doesn't hear her at first. She repeats herself and he replies hi too and walks off. Awkward much. When Lisa leaves, Carter finds himself drinking alone and lonely. It's a huge contrast from the buzz and chatter going on around him in the club. The song that comes on aptly describes Carter's life. Carter finds himself staring at a beautiful brunette. He watches Grace reapply her lip gloss. He smiles at her antics, but his thought is interrupted by a call from his agent. The club is too noisy, so he goes outside to answer the call. Grace finally orders a drink from the bar. Joni meets her and is not surprised to find out that she is alone. She pleads with Grace to give her 2 hours before she returns home because she wants to take her date back to their house. Grace doesn't like the idea. She reminds Joni that it is high time she got her own place. She agrees to allow them to use her house for 2 hours while she looks for something to occupy herself with. As if things are not bad already, a young woman spills her drink all over Grace and doesn't even have the courtesy to apologize. The already bad evening turns into the worst night for Grace and she decides to head home. Carter is furious with his agent on the phone. Apparently, Danny wants him to stay back here while she figures something out for him, but Carter doesn't like the idea of not being on the rink. He is frustrated when Danny hangs up on him. He lets out an expletive that frightens Grace, who comes out through the door. Carter recognizes her from the bar and apologizes for scaring her. She accepts and goes on her way. Carter decides not to return to the bar just like Grace since he has no one waiting for him. He goes after her and tries to start up a conversation with her, but Grace does not seem interested in it. She stops a taxi and gives him her house address. She forgets that she has been barred. Carter, on the hand, does not want to end their conversation. However stilted it has been. His prayers are answered when his fan from the bar shows up ready to continue his questions from where he stopped in the bar. Carter jumps into the taxi with a surprised Grace and asks the driver to move before the fan gets to them. He gives the driver the address to his hotel while he tells an infuriated Grace that it is around the corner. It's as silent as a graveyard in the car as they ignore each other until the driver stops the car at the hotel. With nothing else to say, Carter alights from the taxi and thanks her. The driver tries to confirm Grace's address with her, but she doesn't respond as she remembers her promise to Joni. She decides to brave the cold and alight from the taxi at the hotel. Carter watches Grace stand outside the hotel. He finds it weird that she does not make her way into the hotel, so he goes outside and asks her if she is okay. Grace doesn't know what to tell him. She goes with the truth and tells him that she is barred from entering her house for the next few hours. As the gentleman that he is, Carter invites her to his room for drinks while she waits for time to go by. Grace is eager to leave the cold outside. She doesn't wait for him to finish before she agrees to his suggestion and leads the way to the hotel, leaving a surprised Carter outside in the cold. She is surprised at the extravagance of his suite when they go up. It makes her curious about what he does, but when she notices that he is hesitant to say, she tells him not to bother. She explores his bedroom and is drawn to the beautiful view from his room. She sits on his bed while she stares at the view, deep in thought. Carter joins her on the bed and joins his hands to hers, lying on the bed. The air in the room charges with high emotions. Carter draws closer to Grace and he gets excited when she gives him her consent to continue kissing her neck. Things get steamy. It's obvious that Carter is attracted to Grace and he tries to push things further between them. Grace is a and even though she tries to be in the right mood for romance, she looks uncomfortable and doesn't seem to enjoy Carter's advances. Bent on proving everyone who calls her frigid wrong, Grace undresses to a thin camisole, and things get a lot more heated between them as they find their way to the bed. Grace is uncomfortable as she lies on the bed while Carter does all the work. She is forced to tell him the truth that she has not been intimate before. Carter freezes when she drops this bomb on him. Embarrassed at her admission, Grace quickly jumps off the bed and rushes out of his room with her clothes while Carter unsuccessfully tries to call her back. She finds herself again in the cold trudging home, but Carter does not allow her to go far as he is hot on her heels. He confronts her and is surprised when she breaks down in tears. She is an emotional mess as she feels sorry for her pathetic self and the bad day which doesn't seem to end for her. He suggests they go grab a drink, but Grace gives him a side eye as she remembers the incident that just happened because they wanted to get drinks. They arrive at an empty bar, and they order drinks with chips when they find out that the kitchen is closed. They get to learn about each other, but Carter lies to her that he is in sales. He decides to broach the topic of Grace being a but she is too embarrassed and tells him to lower his voice, even though they are the only patrons at the bar. Their order arrives and while they eat, Grace tries to get it off her chest. She finds it uncomfortable to talk about intimacy to the point of being a prude. She refers to sleeping with someone as eating hamburgers. Carter finds her analogy doubly weird as he tries to understand why a 27-year-old woman is yet to eat a hamburger. For Grace, her first hamburger must have standards and not be some drive-through burger. but Carter tries to argue that those are sometimes the best ones. Even though Grace tries to act unbothered by her situation, she is deeply concerned that she might have missed out on the experience completely. She claims to be reserved, she blames her studies and her friend Joni for taking up all her time back in university. It's always other people's fault for Grace, as she claims that men do not seem to like or pick her. Carter suggests that she is picky, and with her high standards, no guy would be able to measure up. Their conversation hits a deadlock when Grace informs him that she is not ready to lower her standards for any man. Carter leaves her speechless when he concludes that she is unable to be with a man because she feels she is better than everyone else, the exact thing her friend Joni keeps telling her. Grace is surprised that he is able to read her so well. She asks him again what he does, but Carter still lies that he is a salesperson. Their somewhat weird but interesting date comes to an end with the both of them at a truce. Grace decides not to head home yet but spend more time with Carter. Grace leads the way to a restaurant since they are still hungry, and they seem more relaxed with each other compared to before. At the restaurant, while they eat, they talk about Grace and her man problems. Carter is stunned when he learns that her romantic life is more messed up than he thinks. She not only has high standards but is also too shy to approach a guy she likes. Grace seems to enjoy their time together, and she is bent on milking their time together. Who knows when she would meet a willing guy to whom she can pour her heart to again. Grace decides to take the new in-town Carter to a bar. When they get there, she goes off to the side to Google who he is. Apparently, she finds it weird that he is evasive when she asks him where he is from. She is shocked to find out that he is a hockey star. His lie hurts her because she literally just told him her deepest secrets. Angry at his betrayal, she takes it out on him as they fight over the best place to sit in a bar. Carter notices her changed mood and asks her about it. She confronts him on his lies as she reads what she saw on Google to him. She expects him to act remorseful and beg her, but is stunned when Carter leaves her and walks out of the bar in anger. The audacity, he literally just lied to her. She should be the one leaving in anger and not him. Apparently, Carter never wanted her to know about him being a hockey player. He is still reeling from the shock and embarrassment of being dropped by his team and potential demotion to a lower league. To make him feel better, Grace takes him figure skating, but Carter isn't interested in it, as it reminds him of his club situation. Grace pretends to fall, so she tricks Carter into joining her on the rink. She has a way with him as he opens up to her about how his search for his father motivated him to be a hockey player. Grace tags him a show-off when he displays some of his excellent skating skills. She tries to give him some advice concerning his club issues, but he doesn't want to hear her out. Carter drags Grace skating in the rink, and they have lots of fun as their excited voices ring out in the park. After their time at the rink, Carter agrees, although reluctantly, for Grace to help him figure out his job situation. Grace leads him to her workplace. She instructs him not to touch anything, but Carter remains Carter as he walks to her boss's office. He zooms in on Claire's liquor and takes it out. He might as well have fun while Grace tries to figure him out. Grace doesn't like this, but Carter challenges her to stop being a goody two-shoes and sit on her boss's chair. Grace smiles. Apparently Carter knows her too well as she sits on it, and they proceed with her assessment. In a short time, she analyzes Carter and concludes that his sudden disinterest in his game points to his father's absence in his life. Carter is sad at this realization, but Grace tries to cheer him up. She advises him to try putting his best in his game again, but this time for himself and not for his father. Carter is impressed with her analysis and her advice. A message comes in on Carter's phone from his manager. It's good news this time, as his team might still want him. This puts him in a good mood, and he wears his first genuine smile for the day on his face. On their way out of the office, they run into Roshan and a few other co-workers who are coming over to the office to have a party. Straight-laced Grace frowns at the idea since it's against office policies, but Roshan and the rest have nowhere else to take their party to. Carter joins in their argument. He offers his well-furnished room and bar at the hotel to them, and the party guys jump at his offer to Grace's consternation. They get to his hotel room, and Grace's colleagues ooh and ah over his exquisite room and karaoke bar. Grace is mad at Carter for allowing it, but he encourages her to go for Roshan. She is surprised that he notices her attraction to Roshan. Apparently, she wears her emotions on her sleeves. He encourages her to have fun with the others and not hide like a wallflower like she is wont to do. Carter is the designated barman while the office guys have fun with the karaoke. No matter how badly they sing, they have fun. Grace seems more relaxed as she asks Carter for pointers on how to approach Roshan. She balks at his idea of initiating a kiss with Roshan, but Carter convinces her to go ahead with it. He acts the part of a concerned friend even though he doesn't seem to like the idea. He stares at her with hooded eyes, and it's obvious that there are sparks forming between them. Grace is giddy with excitement at the prospect of kissing Roshan, and she applies gloss to prep her lips for the action they're about to get. She invites Roshan to Carter's bedroom under the guise of showing him the view, but it's awkward between them, as they both stare at each other, waiting for the other to start up a conversation. Roshan brings up Carter. He is curious about their relationship. He is excited when Grace tells him that they just met, and he admits to her that he likes her. Finally, Grace's wish is granted. They share a kiss, but it's a flop. There are no sparks and no tingly feelings, which leaves Grace disappointed. Embarrassed, she walks out of the room to the sitting area where the others are. She picks up her things and bolts out of the suite. Carter is surprised to see her leaving in a haste, and goes after her to see what's wrong. But Grace is almost in tears as she tells him that the kiss with Roshan sucked. She is afraid that she has no hope of getting a man. She is piqued at Carter when he tells her that Roshan is just one guy and that she still has time to meet other men. She claims not to be as adventurous as Carter and Joni. Done with the conversation and the day in general, she storms off to the elevator, leaving Carter furious at her for running away. Her ride back home is uneventful as she goes through the events of the day she just had. Back at the hotel, Carter and Roshan have a drink together as they discuss Grace and her unexpected exit from their party. Roshan is hurt at the way she left after their kiss, but Carter advises him to go after her if he really likes her. Grace arrives home to a messy house. She finds Joni sleeping comfortably on the couch, obviously tired from her 2 hours supposed rendezvous. After the bad day she just had, she retires to her room. It's almost 3 a.m., but Grace is wide awake. She stops, annoyed at how predictable she is. True to Carter's words, she always folds her clothes a night before work the next day. Suddenly a knock sounds at her door, followed by Carter's voice, asking her to let him in. She allows him inside with an instruction to keep quiet. Carter is a pretty good friend. He came to check up on her since she left in a bad mood. She assures him that all is well. Without waiting for an invitation, he walks into her bedroom and is impressed with how organized it looks. They stay in a palpable silence as they sit close to each other on her bed. The air in the room becomes heated as their labored breaths are heard. They shuck off their jackets and with their elbows touching, Grace takes Carter's advice and initiates contact. She turns to him and sits on his lap, and like a tigress unleashed, they have a steamy makeout session that leads to the bed. Grace wakes up to her alarm the next morning, in bed with Carter. She stares and observes as he sleeps. Carter wakes up to her struggling to wear her clothes under the duvet. Carter receives a text from his manager. He has been sent to the lower league, and in fact, should be on his way to the airport to take a flight to Syracuse. He lies to Grace that he has been transferred to an even better option, Los Angeles, so they don't lose their good mood. Top on Grace's list for the day is work. She evades his embrace as she tells him it's time to stand up. She walks into the kitchen and finds Joni and her friend from the night before. Joni tries to apologize for leaving the house messy, but Grace waves it off. It's obvious that she is in a great mood. Even a messy house can't change that. Carter walks into the kitchen to say his goodbyes. He is instantly recognized by Grace's friend. Joni's mouth is agape as she tries to process a man leaving Grace's room. Grace initiates an awkward handshake between them while she leads a gutted Carter to the door. It's obvious he wanted more from her, but Grace doesn't feel the same. Grace doesn't believe Joni when she tells her that Carter had eyes for her. She sees it as just a one-time thing between them. Besides, he had just been drafted to a new team, so it wouldn't even work out. Both Grace and Carter are miserable being apart. On a whim, Grace leaves work and decides to go after Carter to express her feelings to him. At the hotel, she is informed by the receptionist that he has checked out of the hotel. Surprised but armed with the name of the airport he went to, she jumps into a waiting taxi and heads over there. She finds him beside the lake speaking to his manager on the phone. He is surprised to see her and ends the call. She confronts him about lying to her about the new city he was traded to. He says it doesn't matter, but she insists that it matters to her. Carter is obviously in pain seeing her again, and he fears another rejection. Grace gets closer to him, whispering that she likes him. Their night together meant so much to her. Grace looks relieved that she was finally able to say it without breaking into a sweat. It seems the curse has been broken after all. Carter is all smiles as he draws her close into his arms, and they share a sweet, sweet kiss, without a care in the world. With a brighter look at life, Carter proceeds to fly to Syracuse with his gear bag while Grace takes a bus to work. While on the bus, she is impressed when she looks at the man sitting close to her, an improvement from when she was 14.